Hi you guys, welcome back to another one of my videos. If you're new here, my name is Holly and thank you so much for watching. You guys, this is the first video I'm filming in my new space. I moved recently and so this isn't how it's gonna look, but I don't know, I just felt like I needed some greenery and not just a wall. So that's why the plant is here. So let me know what you think of this setup. I think I'm gonna put a drawer behind me though and have some stuff in the background so it looks a bit nicer. My earrings, as normal, are from the Rowe collective. I will link the website below. It's my friend's small business, so if you want to support a small business, feel free. She would appreciate it so much, I'm sure. Before I get into this case, I just also wanted to mention that I will cover themes of sexual assault, and so if that's something that you aren't comfortable with listening to, it might be a good time to click off this video now. But without further ado, let's get into it. So this all starts in Kapunda, which is a small country town located about an hour north of Adelaide CBD in South Australia. It actually really reminds me of Mannum, which is where the murder I covered last week took place. I think it reminds me of Mannum because they are both small country towns located near Adelaide with roughly the same population of about 3,000 people in each. Kapunda is slightly more expensive than Mannum to buy at least, but it's still really cheap compared to the national average. There's one primary school and one high school and not a whole lot to do there, but there are walks, a history museum and a massive statue of a miner you can see if you would like. And like many other small towns, the people of Kapunda are really proud of their beautiful town and everyone knows everyone. It's one of those places where you literally can't leave your house without running into about 10 people you know. One family in particular that lived in this town though was the Rowe family. Andrew and Rose Rowe had 2 children. The first, their baby boy, was born in 1985 and they named him Christopher. And then 9 years later in 1994, the couple was so excited to welcome a little baby girl who they named Chantel. This family was just your average happy family. Both Rose and Andrew worked really hard to provide for their kids and they were just a well-respected family. Andrew ran a carpet cleaning company, which is actually how the family ended up in Kapunda. I believe that they had grown up in the Adelaide area, which isn't too far from Kapunda, but Andrew must have seen a gap in the market in Kapunda for carpet cleaning, which is why the family ended up moving there. And the family really liked the suburbs, so the move just made sense. They made friends really easily and Andrew, Rose, Christopher and Chantel were all just really respected and liked by everyone. By 2010, Christopher was actually engaged. I believe he was still living at home at this time, but after the wedding, the couple planned to get a place of their own. In late 2010, Chantel actually also met someone. She started dating a boy who we will call Damien, and they were just really happy together. They had a lot of mutual friends, which is how they sort of got to know each other, and yeah, they just really got along and Chantel was so excited about this new relationship. In the first week of November that same year, Chantel actually started a new job. It was her first job and it was at a cafe called Divine Cafe, which was in a suburb about 20 minutes away from Kapunda called Nuriatpa. She was so excited about how this job was bringing her some independence because she was now making her own money. Chantel was 16 and it just seemed like her life was really starting to begin. I feel like 16, for me at least, was when I really started working out who I was and what I wanted to do, and I feel like Chantel was definitely there. It just seemed like she was thriving. On the weekend before the 8th of November, Christopher and his fiance actually both set off for a little holiday on the Gold Coast in Queensland. The couple loved traveling and had managed to get time off, so it just seemed like the perfect time to go. It would have been summer too, so I can imagine it would have been absolutely just so beautiful, so nice up on the Gold Coast at that time. And right before school holidays too, so not so many kids. Rose and Andrew had actually also gone away on the Saturday night. They'd been invited to a party in Adelaide, and so they decided to go out there and spend the night there and come back the Sunday morning. And this meant that Chantal was left home alone for the night with no one else there. And can you guys guess what a 16-year-old decides to do on a night that they have a free house? If you guessed have some friends over, then you're correct. Chantal had a little gatho, and for those of you that aren't Australian, I guess you would call it like a little get-together. There wasn't that many people there. It was basically just Chantal, some of her friends, her boyfriend, and some of his friends. One of Damien's friends that came along was called Jason. Like I said before, Chantal and Damien were a new couple, and this meant that at this event, they were spending a lot of time together. You could definitely tell that they were a couple, and this seemed to irritate one of Damien's friends called Jason because he actually liked Chantal, and Chantal was aware of this. I believe that Jason had brought it up in the past to her, but the thing was, Jason just wasn't on Chantal's radar at all. He wasn't her type. He was this little 52-kilo scrawny guy, and she was with Damien. She really liked Damien. She just wasn't interested in Jason at all. And so although it was really weird to Chantal that Jason was so interested, because he was friends with Damien, she just sort of let it slide, and she wasn't really that bothered by him. And at this party especially, she was having a really nice night. Jason was definitely the least of her worries. I believe that night there was a few drinks consumed. I don't know who was drinking and whatnot, and yes, some of the people were under the age of 18. I know that Jason was 18, but I don't know about Damien and the other people, and Chantal was 16. But regardless, everyone watched movies together, and it just seemed like a really nice, really fun night. The following morning, which was Sunday the 7th, Rose and Andrew returned from Adelaide. They got home and the family just hung out a little bit. Chantal actually ended up staying home that day because she wasn't feeling that well. I don't think it was like a hangover. I think she was coming down with a little bit of a cold, and the family that night had a roast together and they just hung out. Sadly though, this would be the last night that this family would ever hang out together, as in the early hours of Monday the 8th of November 2010, Chantal, Rose and Andrew would all be murdered. They were all brutally stabbed to death, and this case is a really shocking one, and I will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. It's not known exactly what time these murders took place, but the bodies were discovered on Monday the 8th, but in like the morning, I think around 11 AM. And when they were discovered, the Rowe family's neighbors actually had something really quite interesting to say. They said that the previous night at around 1 AM, they'd heard Rose screaming out help, and after that they'd heard a loud thud, but for whatever reason they didn't call the police. And look, I'm not blaming them. I don't know, but maybe it wasn't the first time they'd heard the family having an argument and they didn't want to seem like they were intruding. I have no idea what their thought process was, but I just thought it was interesting that they heard it taking place. Like, that's just so weird. Like, imagine how they feel now knowing that they heard a murder. Like, that's just so crazy. But yeah, I just thought that was a relevant piece of information that you guys might find interesting. I'm not sure who it was that actually came across the bodies of the Rowe family, but I can imagine it was a very traumatizing experience. It may have actually been those same neighbors, I don't know, but whoever they were, they called the police straight away. Because Kapunda is such a small town, at the time there was only 2 policemen working over the whole town, and when the call came into the police station, only one of those policemen attended the scene. When they got there, they could tell from outside of the house that it was such a brutal murder because they could see blood everywhere inside the house. They actually didn't go into the house by themselves. They called an ambulance, and and waited until the ambulance attended, and then everyone went into the house together. News about this case broke pretty fast, but like a lot of cases, not all the information came out. Initially, news articles were just covering the fact that multiple bodies had been found in a house on Harriet Street. And I guess the reason why police do this is to make sure that they're not giving out the wrong information to the public, because at this point they weren't even sure if it was a murder-suicide. Obviously they have their suspicions, but I guess it's just a precaution if you were to say that it was a murder, a triple murder, and then it turned out to be a murder-suicide. I guess you run that risk of causing hysteria in the town when people think there's a killer on the loose that potentially there isn't, even though in this case there was. I hope that makes sense. When this happened though, Chris was still in Queensland with his fiance, and as the news broke of a murder in Kapunda, the names of the victims weren't released straight away. And so Chris saw the news and he saw that a house on Harriet Street had had this awful murder, and he tried to call his family straight away, but of course they weren't picking up, which meant that he took to Facebook to ask if anyone from the area could confirm which house it was that had this murder happen at. Unfortunately though, someone on Facebook got the houses wrong, and so they said that it wasn't his family's house that had the murder happen at. Of course, at the time, Christopher probably felt such a huge sense of relief, as he would have believed that his family was fine, but sadly this wasn't the case. It was his family's house where the attack had happened, and I can't imagine how emotionally tolling it would be to worry that it's your family and then get this false sense of relief when someone says it's not, only to learn that it actually was your family. And I'm sure whoever made that mistake probably had the best intentions, but mistakes happen, and although this is definitely not a mistake that you would want to make, we are only human beings, and so I guess sometimes the wrong information is going to be relayed out. Everyone in the community was shocked when this happened to the Rowe family, because Kapunda was a safe place. Crimes like this didn't happen in Kapunda, and people were scared because the killer had to be out and about, and what if another family faced the same fate? Police really felt a lot of pressure to crack this case, and for good reason, and they were really prompt in starting their investigation, looking for any clues in and outside of the house that would help them work out who it was that could commit such an awful crime like this. And it really was an awful crime. Multiple police who were put on this case said that this was one of the worst brutal murders that they had ever attended. The amount of blood that was all over the inside of the house was just like nothing else that these police had ever seen. While trying to work out who had committed this crime, they were also trying to piece together what had actually happened, and this is what they knew so far. Because of the way the blood trails were, police worked out that the killer had entered in through the bathroom window, making his way to Chantel's room first, where he sexually assaulted her. Andrew was the second one to be attacked, but the first to be killed, with over 29 stab wounds on his body. He was found at the end of the kitchen bench. The killer met him there as he was probably on his way to his daughter's room after hearing all the commotion. The killer managed to overpower him, stabbing him so forcefully that parts of the knife were found inside his body later on. Rose Rowe was next. Her body was found in the living room not far from Andrew's. She actually had the most stab wounds, with around 50 all over her body, because she was attacked twice. The first time she survived, although at the time the killer must have thought that she was dead, because this is when they moved back to Chantel's room to kill her. She was hiding under her bed when the killer entered, and the two of them fought before she was overpowered and dragged out from under the bed and put on the bed. She was then stabbed around 33 times all over her body, and as if that wasn't enough, the killer then sexually assaulted her again and attempted to redress her. And this is when the killer realized that Rose wasn't actually dead. She was on her hands and knees, crawling, trying desperately to get away from this sick, sadistic killer. But sadly, when the killer realized this, they continued to stab her, and eventually Rose passed away. It looked like at one point the killer had even tried to mop up some of the blood, but I guess just because there was so much blood there, they'd given up not long afterwards. A day into the investigation, police found a trail of blood outside of the home. Police also found a fingerprint in Chantel's blood inside the house that didn't match any of the Rowe family's fingerprints, and also there was semen found on Chantel, which was assumed to be that of the killers. When the test results for the blood that was found outside the house came back, police could tell that it was a male's blood, but whoever it was not on the DNA database that they had, as this mystery person hadn't previously committed any crimes, or at least any crimes that were big enough for them to be arrested for. Whoever did this had left a lot of clues. This was definitely not a professional crime, and I don't like to use that word, but basically I just mean that there were clues left at the crime scene, which meant that it wasn't going to take long for police to be able to find out who did this. In fact, not long after this, someone had anonymously called Crime Stoppers because they'd seen a Facebook post which they thought looked suspicious. This post was made by someone that we will call Dave, and it basically said, "I can't believe what I've done. I don't know if I can carry on." And this was slightly alarming because the post was made not long after the murders, and it was posted by someone who lived around the same area also. Police jumped on this clue straight away, questioning Dave about his post, but sadly they came to a dead end. It turned out Dave had had a big argument with his partner the previous night, which is why he made the post, and police looked into his story and everything checked out. And so because of this, he was cleared. Police were also following up other leads though. With any crime, police will look into the events that took place leading up to the crime and see if those will be able to give them any clues as to what happened. And because Chantel had had this group of friends over in the days before the crime, police made it a priority to interview all the people that attended. And all of these young adults really cooperated. They let police look into their social medias and gave them any information that they asked for. Of course, Damien was amongst those people that got interviewed, and he also was really cooperative. Police did have a few questions that they really wanted answers to with Damien though. They found out that at around 5 AM on the Monday morning, Damien had actually sent Chantel a text. Chantel was feeling a bit sick that Sunday night, and so that's the reason he sent the text. And police could actually see just after 5 AM when he sent the text, someone had tried to reply. And why I say try is because Chantel's phone was actually out of credit, which meant that for whatever reason, police could see that someone had tried to reply, but when the reply had been sent, it obviously didn't go to Damien's phone because there was no credit, and so they couldn't work out what it was that was said in that reply. And it couldn't have been Chantel that sent that reply because, as we know, she was murdered a few hours before this text would have even come through. And this meant that police had to assume it was the killer that tried to send that reply. I'm personally so curious as to what the reply was. I think only because we know that it obviously was the killer and not Chantel sending that reply. So I don't know, I just find it so interesting. Like, what were they saying? Like, what would they have wanted to say to Damien? I guess we may never know what that text message said, and either way, Damien was ruled out as a suspect. Another person that was interviewed by police though was our little scrawny friend Jason Downey. He gave a statement to police about what happened the night of the party, but his statement just didn't sit right with police. It seemed like he was really pushing the fact that on Sunday, which was the night of the murders and not the night police were asking about, by the way, he was really just trying to push the fact that he had an alibi for that night. The thing was, police weren't asking for an alibi. They were just asking about what happened the night of the murders, and so they sort of just thought, why are you trying so hard to prove your innocence when we're not even questioning your innocence? Do any of you guys, when you're listening to these cases, just feel like sometimes you could have done it so much better. I'm not saying that I would ever murder someone, but maybe this is weird, but sometimes I'll think about like what I would do if I did. I don't know if I should be admitting this online, but I just feel like I could commit a better crime. Why be so sus? Anyways, let's talk a little bit about Jason Downey. So Jason was actually born in Scotland, Kilmarnock, Scotland to be exact, and he migrated to Australia in 2006 with his mother and older brother when he was 15. He actually also had an older sister, but for whatever reason she stayed in Scotland. I guess maybe she was already 18 or whatever, so she just decided to stay. Like a lot of other 15-year-olds though, he wasn't overly thrilled at the idea of moving from Scotland to Australia, but he didn't really have a choice. He didn't like living in Kapunda, and apparently he would call it Crapunda, which kind of made me laugh. But on his social media, he described himself as someone who enjoyed partying and hanging out with his friends. He loved sport, describing himself as someone who is very active on and off the basketball court, if you guys can understand what that means. I feel like though, if you're someone who needs to tell the world how active you are, you're probably not that active when it comes to, you know, doing the dirty. Jason and his mum were really close though, and they had a pretty good relationship. And I guess maybe one of the reasons why their relationship was so strong is because when Jason was only 2 months old, his father up and left him and his siblings, and I'm sure that would have impacted the way that he grew up. But back to the interview, when Jason started acting a little bit suspicious, police obviously started paying a little bit more attention to him. They noticed that he had a few cuts on his left hand, which they asked him about, and he told them that it was from a bike accident. He fell off his bicycle and cut up his hand. And police then also asked if they could take some of his DNA, which he complied with. Police actually took samples from all of Chantel's guy friends of their DNA, but by this point they were really waiting to see if Jason's matched. And on Tuesday the 16th of November 2010, the DNA found in the Rowe family home would come back as a match for that of Jason Downey's. And so that same afternoon, police arrested him for the murders of Rose, Andrew and Chantel Rowe. So what was the motive? According to Jason, on the Sunday night he had had a fight with his mum around 11 p.m. This fight was pretty bad to the point where Jason's mum had actually told him to get out, and she locked the door behind him. Jason felt like he didn't have any friends' houses that he could stay at, and so he opted to sleep in his car. But he was really angry. He was angry at his mum. He was angry at the fact that he was in this town that he didn't like, and he was angry at the fact that he was single. He craved a relationship with someone, and he never found that. He was jealous of what Chantel and Damien had. He wanted to be with Chantel even though she had made it so clear that she wasn't interested in him, and this was enough of a reason to go to her house and kill her and her family. What sort of person does that? After Jason was charged, he was still claiming innocence, which meant that this case went to trial. But a year after the murders took place, almost exactly to the day, Jason Downey changed his plea to a guilty plea. And it's not because he felt bad, it's literally just because there was so much evidence against him that he was going to have no chance getting off on this charge. And if you claim that you're guilty, you will get a lesser sentence than if it went to trial and you were convicted that way. After all of this, he was sentenced to a non-parole period of 35 years, which is actually 7 years less than what he would have got if he stuck to his not guilty plea. And this means he won't be eligible for parole until he's in his 50s, which I always find it so crazy that even though he's in prison for at least 35 years, he still can get out. The Rowe family's never coming back. They'll never be able to see another day, but it's so wild to me that our system allows these murderers to live out the ends of their lives freely. And this is probably a conversation for another day because I have so many opinions on our legal system, but that's just how I felt. Interestingly, the knives used to commit this murder were never found, and they may be never found. You guys are probably wondering about Christopher too, and after Jason's sentencing, he wrote a statement which I thought I would read here. All we can be thankful for today is that we have escaped the pain of a trial. We can close this chapter now, and I can start to focus my strength on keeping my mum, dad, and Shani's memories alive, and I can slowly try to find my own way to survive through this. Many feel my family and I have reached some sort of justice today. I disagree. That the lives of my dad, mum, and sister were viciously taken by someone of sound mind qualifies this bastard, Jason Downey, to only 35 years non-parole while my family and I continue to serve life. Please explain to me the justice in this. This is not a justifiable offense. He cannot return my family to me, so why should he have the right to any definition of life? And I personally 100% agree with him. How can you take 3 lives and still be allowed to live out your life at the end? It just frustrates me, but you guys are welcome to. If you disagree or have any other thoughts or opinions on the sentence, you're welcome to let me know below. As much as I feel very strongly about my opinion, I'm always open to a conversation in the comments below. I also actually did manage to find Christopher on Facebook, and it seems like he ended up marrying his fiancée Amanda, and they have 4 beautiful kids together. It was kind of bittersweet to see the photos of all his children because it made me think of how Andrew and Rose will never get to meet their grandchildren and how Chantel will never get to meet her nieces and nephews either. I don't know, it just doesn't really seem fair. But that is everything that I have on this case. Let me know below what your thoughts are about this case. If you think Jason Downey deserves a longer sentence or not, let me know below. Please subscribe if you liked this video. I'm so close to 1,000. I would be just over the moon if you subscribed, and as always, I will link my Instagram below. If you want to see a little bit more of me, you're welcome to follow me on there. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye, you guys.